kill and eat all the native fish and just eat everything that's in the ponds.
It's really fun, and we use bread to catch the fish. All you have to do, you have to throw out your bait, which is usually bread, and then you have to watch the bread underneath, and when you see it wiggling, you don't get it in straight away, you wait till it drags it underwater, then you start reeling it in really fast. But you do have to be careful because I do have spikes.
Look, for all the community who's taken part in the event, thank you for coming down and supporting us and be part of it. For all our supporting partners and all the local businesses that have given us donations, I'm not going to read out a list because I may miss someone, but it's a significant amount of businesses and associations who have supported us. So again, thank you to you all. And I'd just encourage more people to get involved. And when we're doing this again, come down, great place to spend the day with the kids, and we end up with a good environmental outcome at the same time.
Last year she won the comp, so at age 4 she won, so I forget how big the fish was, but it was the one. We only caught one, but that's all we needed for her to win the comp, so she was very happy.
Shake hands. Thank you very much, and thanks for being part of the tilapia tournament.
Fellow councillors, staff, residents viewing via live stream, good morning all and welcome. I acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of the land on which this meeting is being held and pay my respect to the elders past, present and emerging. I now hand over to Reverend Mark Dewar, who will deliver the opening prayer. Mark.
Good morning. Before I pray, I'd just like to share with you one verse of many that shaped my leadership in the Cassowary Coast Uniting Church in Innisfail, Tully and Mission Beach. And that verse simply reads, "Now it is required of those who have been given a trust, they must prove faithful." So let us pray. Lord God, your Spirit has moved over the face of the country and formed the land and the sea. Your Spirit has moved over our tropical waters and our land and created a rich variety of life. Your Spirit has moved in the lives of men, women and children and given them an affinity to this country and brought us to this place of freedom and plenty. Your Spirit moves today in the towns and villages of the diverse region we call the Cassowary Coast. This place we call home is a gift to us. Lord, there is much of which we are proud. Its diversity and culture, its festivals, its success stories, the events, the resilience and the tenacity of the people. Yet, Lord, we know that there is so much more to do. There are some characteristics of our region we love and some that make us shudder. So, Lord, I pray that these men and women, our elected leaders and that those that serve them, may be able to put aside personal agendas and political ambitions and the capacity to wield power so that they might right here and now prove faithful with the trust that has been given them, to continue to govern with diligence, to continue to be trustworthy leaders they are for the sake of the region we love. Lord, I lift these men and women up to you now, and I thank you for their God-given capacity and willingness to be courageous leaders. I ask that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their task. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around the region here on our coast. In the name of the one who came to save and set us free, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Saviour. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. That was very well done.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors, we move on to apologies. I have one apology, Mr. Goodman. Are there any further apologies? Take that as a no. We move on to... Yep, sure.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I note that the agenda bears a reference to material personal interest and conflict of interest, and that, of course, has been replaced by prescribed conflicts of interest and declarable interest, which the Mayor will now address. If I may, Mr. Mayor, in accordance with the legislation, I've had appropriate written notice from yourself. Sorry about that. I'll just repeat that quickly. The agenda refers to material personal interests and conflicts of interest. The appropriate declaration now is in respect of prescribed interests and declarable interests. And, Mr. Chairman, I can confirm that I've had written advice in accordance with the legislation from Councillor Pervin, who will declare, I believe, a prescribed conflict of interest in relation to the matter to be dealt with in general business under the Pacific Labour Scheme and Seasonal Worker Program, only insofar as it refers to Peacefully Valley farming. I note that you've supplied me with a written notification of your prescribed interest in the matter to be determined at item 6.3, the self-referral matter, and I note that Councillors Farinelli and Millwood have provided me with the appropriate written notice of declarable interests in respect of the same item.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillors and staff, declaration of prescribed conflicts of interest or declarable conflicts of interest. Please use this opportunity to make public any prescribed conflicts of interest or declarable conflict of interest in respect of the items in the agenda. Councillors should use this opportunity to disclose and or comment on any other councillors and or staff interests in accordance with the Act and regulations. Councillors, any conflict of interest to declare? Councillor Pervin.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a prescribed conflict of interest in general business, as I've had business dealings with Peacefully Valley farming over the years.
Thank you, Councillor Pervin. Any further declarations? Councillor Millwood.
Even though I've written a letter, do I need to declare that?
Yes, please.
Yes, I have a perceived, a declarable conflict of interest in item 6.3, which I don't believe that I have a conflict, but I have declared it.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Councillor Farinelli.
Yes, I'm declaring, I believe I may have a declarable interest in 6.3 referral from the Office of the Independent Assessor, self-referral complaint, Councillor Mark Nolan, the Mayor, in that the self-referral is over an email that I sent to the Mayor and that he then shared with individuals outside of council. I will be seeking a decision from my fellow councillors to take part in the discussion and to take part in the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Farinelli. And yes, I have a declared conflict of interest in item 6.3, and when that matter comes up, I'll leave the room and the Deputy Mayor will take the chair. Mine's a prescribed conflict. Okay. Okay, any further declarations? If not, later today, our governance lead, Ms Slattery, will deliver a report in relation to new guidelines around council information sessions and workshops. I just want to refresh councillors' memories on our current standing orders in relation to council meetings. Councillor conduct during meetings and maintenance of good order. This is a current standing order. Councillors will conduct themselves in accordance with the principles of the Local Government Act 2009 and the standards of behaviour set out in the Code of Conduct. The chairperson may observe or be made aware of instances of possible unsuitable meeting conduct. No councillor who is speaking shall be interrupted except upon a point of order being raised either by the chairperson or by a councillor. The next step, if it occurs again, I will issue a first warning, and then the chairperson may adjourn the meeting where disorder continues during that meeting. So they're current standing orders, and just wanted to refresh all our memories in relation to today's meeting. We'll now move on to the previous minutes. Would somebody move that the previous minutes were a true and accurate record, please? Moved by Councillor Barnes, seconded by Councillor Pervin. All in favour? That's carried. Any business arising from the previous minutes? The last general meeting, yep. Any business arising from the previous minutes? I'll take that as a no. We move on to item 3, economic activation and tourism. Item 3.1, the CCR Tourism Monthly Report, and Mr Blanchett will deliver this report.
Morning,
Mr Blanchett.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr Mayor, councillors. Morning. Let's get set up. So, welcome to Tourism Report for September 2020. I'll take the report as written and just go through a couple of highlights and for any questions. Starting with number 1. So the Cardwell mountain bike project took a big step forward with the inception meeting, it's called. So the very first meeting with all the key stakeholders, which was at a good stage for the traditional owners. There's been a lot of conversations with them up to that stage. The inception meeting was where World Trails, the contractor, basically shaped out the way forward and conversed with the stakeholders. And since then, there's updates with a plan on the program through to December, which is when we're hoping that the completion of that feasibility study and concept plan will be completed. We've also had the IVAN on the road. So recently in September, the IVAN went on tour to the Cairns Ironman event. Understandably, this year the event had impact from COVID, and there was no expo this year at the Ironman. However, the Cassowary Coast IVAN was still invited to attend, so we pretty much had the expo arena to ourselves through our destination, which was very positive. We were fortunate to have Gilligan shirts to wear to brightly display our colours at the expo. We launched a new marquee on site, so a very prominent display of the marquee which complemented the IVAN well. Support came through from industry, through Tropical Coast Tourism and through agriculture. We were pleasantly supported with some red tip bananas which were prominently on display, and I must say the awareness of that brand was quite impressive on the day, so everyone sort of knew the famous bananas. We were locating them with South Johnson. We were locating them with the Cassowary Coast. And that brand awareness was Cairns locals, but also southerners, southeast Queenslanders that were in Cairns for the school holidays. A couple of other things we did there was we leveraged off the 102 things to do for our profile for our exposure, and this was promptly on display. It was part of our promotion, so we had postcards made with 102 things to do, which was an entry for a competition to win a weekend in the Cassowary Coast. Now, these postcards invited everyone to pick their number one thing to do in the Cassowary Coast. So this competition has provided some attention on 102 things. The people had to stop and think about what they would do in our area. And that information has been collected by TCT. So now we'll have a little data of what the customers think is the number one thing to do, which is very constructive. I'd like to acknowledge we had great support from staff, Councillor Farinelli at the event and Director Adam Sadler, Alexis Collins, and also past staff. Nicole Bennett was so motivated by us being that she came and helped us out at the expo, which is fantastic. It's quite motivating for the team to particularly have a councillor and a director on the stand, and it's quite impressive for the customers too on the day. That's my wrap of the event on tour. I'm not sure if Councillor had anything to add.
Councillor Farinelli.
Through the chair, just to the councillors, yeah, it was a fantastic exercise, and I congratulate the staff for the initiative, taking the initiative, because with it sort of being downsized the whole event as far as the expo was concerned, they could have quite easily just said, oh, well, why bother? But instead they said, no, let's run with this and let's really be the ones there to capture the attention of this audience and promote the region while we can. So congratulations to the staff for taking that initiative. It was extremely positive. The setup we had was incredible. The new drop-down sides for the marquee really do showcase the beauty of this region and some of the highlights we have here. And you know, I think a lot of the locals were just even in awe of that and wanting to have photos taken in front of some of those drop downs. And so very positive exercise. And thank you to the staff for allowing me to come and be part of, and for inviting me and letting me come and be part of that. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Back to you, Mr. Blanchett.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Farinelli. So a good point there. We became the home base for the Cassowary Coast triathletes that were participating, which was another benefit from it. And just to summarise it, our market there is also the Cairns locals. So it's a very good market. They can come to our region 3 or 4 times a year. And of course, we picked up some of the more distant travellers while we were there. Moving on, events. So Red Bull Defiance has confirmed their dates for next year. So that's the early stage of the event for next year. So they've locked the dates in and cause planning is happening, as in where they're still in the same areas for day 1, day 2, but that's the detail that they're working on now. So that's the last weekend in August 2021. In the report, I've got a summary of the Targa event, which was on the 5th of September 2020. Now this had 6 stages in the Cassowary Coast. It's a wider regional event. It's a whole tropical North Queensland event, and for the first time we managed to have them come and visit the Cassowary Coast. I'm not sure councillors may have heard feedback. It's random people in the community have just mentioned they were in the back of South Johnson or Mina Creek or Silkwood and catching the Targa event, which is really positive and encouraging. We have a bit of work to do for next year, and there'll be plenty of time to consult with community on next year. Targa, in fact, there's a quote in there from the owner of Targa that they're very excited about the future in the Cassowary Coast region, and we'll be in touch with a proposal as to what 2021 and beyond could look like. Not in time for this report. That proposal arrived yesterday afternoon, so we'll be able to start considering that for next year. There's a summary of feedback on the event there, and as I say, taking the report as read, there's also a summary of the social data and the exposure, which is probably the key leverage for this event. Councillor Farinelli.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchett. Any questions or comments? Councillor Farinelli.
Just with regards to Targa, Mr. Blanchett and I have met already to sort of with Mark Perry and Carly, just preliminary discussions about, you know, the part we think we could play in this in the future, which is very exciting. Nothing as yet has come to fruition, but I'm looking forward to receiving where they're wanting to go with this, and then seeking support from my fellow councillors to see the benefit that this will have to the region economically and for tourism in the future, a great relationship between Cassowary Coast and Targa.
Councillor Millwood.
Yes, through the chair. I also did experience, I was up on the back docks of Silkwood on the day of Targa, alongside probably another 6 or so vehicles that pulled up to watch. I think it will have very good beneficial economic activation in our area, and I think it's a great thing to have coming to the Cassowary Coast.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Any further comments or questions for the officer? If not, sorry, Councillor Baines.
Yeah.
Just before we let Mr Blanchett step off, I just wanted to bring to Mr Blanchett's attention, as all the councillors know, I was away on Monday, and on Monday I was actually in Handorf in South Australia, and they have ambassadors that wander the streets with maps and answer questions, and I just thought I'd bring a copy home because I'm sure it's something we may look at into the future. And we've got centres that could be, and it's not just specific to Handorf, of course, it's speaking about that entire region and where to go afterwards. So I've just got a copy, I'll table it and give it to Mr Blanchett, with your permission, Mr Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Baines. May I suggest that Mr Blanchett brings that to a future CIS so we can uncover some opportunities for our community?
Absolutely.
Great idea. Thank you, Councillor Baines. Councillor Farinelli.
Just letting you know, Mr Blanchett's not actually finished with his report.
Oh,
A little bit to go.
okay, go for it.
Mr Mayor.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go for it, mate.
So just to finish on the Targa, we have actually had a participant from Targa in our Tully Information Centre last week, and they're from Victoria, and having had contact with the Cassowary Coast, they decided to stay on in Mission Beach since the event until the borders open. So one little example of the economic return. Quickly, I also wanted to mention the tourism team has put together a calendar that we'll be able to prominently display for Cassowary Coast events targeted to tourists. So not less the community events, more the tourism events. This will be a PDF exposed at the on display on the event boards, but it's also got a link to each event. So we'll share it, get it out to councillors, that if you click on one of the events, you'll go straight to the event website. So the event owners will get a direct tap through from our new event calendar, which will feature more prominently. This week is it'll be manageable. Once a month we can update it and progress it as we add new events or events change their information. So a nice colourful calendar to add to the Cassowary Coast story. And finally, the best therapy for struggling businesses during COVID is customers, and the feedback we've had, and it was even an article in the Kent's Post, that visitation's been, in general, fairly good in the Cassowary Coast for the season and the school holidays in particular. So there's just a summary in the report of the activities of Tropical Coast Tourism, and that's the advertising that was targeted to Cairns and Townsville markets, specifically for that reason, to get them into the Cassowary Coast. So there's examples in there of some new initiatives being in the big malls in Cairns and Townsville on display, and some media and radio advertising is just a summary in there. And thank you, that's my report, unless there's questions.
Well, I've got one for you, mate. It's actually a suggestion. I love the idea of the event calendar. Could we get a market calendar for our region? Because we have a lot of markets that are happening. People are always asking, where is it this weekend, etc., etc. And I just think in our information centres, if we had a market calendar, it would steer visitors to the cardboard markets, Mission Beach, Innisfail, Tully, wherever they might be on that particular day, because there's a lot of stuff happening and people miss out because they just don't know.
Yep.
Leave it with you.
No, Mr Mayor, I've got an answer. It's on the bottom of the calendar.
Oh, you've already done it?
Yeah, we've got the markets on here with a link to the markets, but
done.
we're always happy to improve, so any input's always welcome, but we've got them in there. There's also a link to the markets.
Yeah, there is another one that may go on there in the future. There's a steering committee that have had one meeting looking at night markets in Canecutter Court, and that's going to be in conjunction with existing businesses, a pizza shop in the Backpacker building, and the Canecutter Hotel itself. If the cocktail bar gets up and running, then the markets would happen in the hub. That's going to be really exciting, having a night market in Cassowary Coast, because it's very successful in Cairns, and the steering committee want to tap into it here.
Fantastic.
When it happens, we'll make sure it gets added. Yep.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchett. Any Councillor Millwood?
through the chair, I also would just like to bring to everybody's attention that this weekend is the event of the Mission Beach Multi-Sports event. So if you're not doing anything, go down and have a look.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Councillor Baines. It is you, mate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one point I wanted to bring up. I noticed you mentioned the Gullu shirts when you had Ivan. I actually wore my Gullu shirt flying home on Tuesday, and a lot of people commented on it. So they were heading to Cairns for a holiday. So I've, much to my wife's uncomfortableness, I actually had a pocket full of Cassowary Coast cards and said, if you're heading to the far north of Queensland, make sure you go to the heart of the wet tropics and come down the Cassowary Coast for a visit. And I suggested they all link through and do our 102 things to do on our websites. So there was a lot of people. So we're not just southeast Queenslanders now, the bubbles and the safe states. There was a lot of people flying from South Australia into the far north on the direct flight to come for a holiday.
Thank you.
I took that opportunity to blatantly promote it.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Councillor Chewy.
Yeah, good morning through you, Mr Mayor. Just Mr Blanchett, could you just remind us and people that might be watching how they could actually have their event featured on the calendar, please, who they have to go to and how does that become possible so people can just have an understanding. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We pretty much the first step of this is if they're on the Australian Tourism Data Warehouse, because it's a formal sign they're wanting to interact with visitors and attract visitors. So that's the first measure, because then we know the tourists are getting the information they need to commit to an event. They just approach us in a visitor centre, and obviously there's so much space we've got, but we're trying to target the ones that are certainly appealing to visitors and attracting to visitors and fitting the main themes of our destination, which is, culture and food and adventure and nature.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Councillor Farinelli.
Through the Mayor, just wanted to recognise, because I know many of the locals and others have been enjoying the stunning sunflower display at Belvedere that's been created by Frederick James. I got some stats. I actually went up there, so I don't know if anyone else went up to have a look at it. I've never seen anything like it. It was absolutely amazing. Cars were lined up, and I went during the week one day to meet with him and to have a look and talk about it. Cars were lined up. There were people coming in taking photos. Some of the numbers I've received, the first weekend he was opened, the 10th and the 11th of October, he had 733 visits. The second weekend, the 17th and 18th of October, he had 2,292 visits. Weekday averages have been 275 people per day. He's had 4 coaches come from Cairns, 3 from Townsville and 1 from Ingham. 40% of the visitors, he said, are coming from outside of the Cassowary Coast, and he's had over 150,000 views on social media. It's been seen all over the world, on 2 USA networks in Europe and in UK, and on networks in every state in Australia. People came from Cairns Retirement Village, from kindergartens, photography clubs, drone clubs and garden clubs. This is a very positive and timely message, has given priceless exposure to our region at no cost to council and the ratepayer, and in my personal opinion should be celebrated and Fred James congratulated. He has advised me that he does plan to make this an annual event, which I think, why wouldn't you? The exposure it's given to this region has been phenomenal, and I've not seen anything like it. So just wanted to pass those stats on to council, because I just think it's a wonderful outcome, and those people visiting no doubt visited some of the shops in town, maybe bought a coffee, something to eat, so that will have had a direct impact to the economy for our region, and I think it is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farinelli. Councillor Millwood.
Yes, I'd just also like to say to Fred, thank you very much for doing that wonderful display. I think it was incredible, and I have seen lots of photos posted of people that have been and visited it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Any further comments or questions? If not, would somebody move the recommendation that report be received and noted? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Blanchett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
We move on to asset sustainability, 4.1, amendments to the schedule of fees and charge. And Mr Fisher will present this report.
Morning, Mr Fisher.
Morning. Morning.
Morning, councillors. This report this morning is to adopt some fees and charges for two facilities, one being the Tully Grandstand, which has recently been completed, and also the Clump Point boating facility, which is very, very close to completion. I guess the basis of the fees I'm recommending today, for the Tully Grandstand, we've done a comparison and a benchmarking exercise across other facilities within our region and our own fees and charges schedule. As the main basis of that, I guess we anticipate that we will review those like we should review all our fees and charges annually, and particularly with this facility, once we get an idea of the utilisation, the costs of the facility, and also the demand as well for the different types of events and functions that this facility can actually provide for. So that's the basis of those fees. For Clump Point boating facility, this facility has been provided by Main Roads on the basis that it's primarily there to serve commercial operators. So I guess recognising the commercial nature of that and the nature of the commercial market, we engaged Frank Knight Proprietary Limited, who's a valuer, to give us some, professional advice there on what appropriate commercial fees would be. That process included a benchmarking exercise across other facilities in North Queensland, including the ones within the Cassowary coast. They also looked at the level of service across those facilities and adjusted them accordingly in their professional opinion. So that's the basis of those fees. One thing to note for this, for the Clump Point facility, is we are proposing some fee periods to reflect the COVID-19 impacts for commercial operators. So for the shorter term arrangements, we're talking 3 months fee free, and for the longer term ones, 6 months fee free. So happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr Fisher. Any questions or comments? Councillor Barnes.
Justin, through you, Mr Mayor. Justin, one or two of those moorings are going to be for blue nomads. What if we get to the situation where it's not being used enough, and we've got commercial operators that have missed out that could be paying the council a weekly fee? Could we revisit that? Because the blue nomads, for the amount of times that they spend over a 12-month period, couldn't they just drop 1 or 2 anchors and be safe?
Yeah, through the check. We absolutely will review the utilisation on those 2 swing moorings that are being left open at the moment for blue nomads. I guess Main Roads have delegated to us as facility manager that decision-making authority. The basis of the having that availability was obviously through the consultation phase that was undertaken to have some capacity there. But I, in a view, I guess, to be able to promote the facility as blue nomad friendly, that you can drop into Mission Beach, that you can, access services and things like that. But absolutely, we should review that over time, see the utilisation, and then potentially adjust the strategy there. I anticipate with this new facility that there'll be certainly a lot of learning. I know with the management plan for the facility, we intend to actually develop that in consultation with the first, group of successful tenderers, just so that we can, and that the reason we've done that, I guess, is because we don't know the mix of operators we will get in there, and while we don't anticipate a full a range of, say, commercial trawlers, the way you would manage that facility if it was filled with trawlers would be completely different to the way it would be managed if it was filled with tourist boats. So that's why we're doing that, and absolutely those other moorings should be part of that management plan. Well, they will be, and reviewed on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Mr Fisher. Councillor Pervin.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Mr Fisher, these are yearly fees, I'm presuming?
Yes, correct.
And what sort of leases are we looking at?
So at the moment we're looking up to 5 years leases. I guess the basis of that is we want to enable ourselves, because we know we're not actually right in a boom period at the moment, and we don't want to commit ourselves to long-term arrangements. If the market was to increase, we want to have some flexibility that we can actually, not be constrained for potentially 20 years by a deal signed up now when we're not in that peak boom time. So we've worked on 5 years. There's opportunities, obviously what we're doing in these agreements that we intend, or these contracts we intend to execute with users, is really encourage them to perform well, to deliver on on what they've said in their tender in terms of economic activation for the region and their contribution to the economy. And if they're doing that and delivering, obviously we are still talking a 5-year term, but that's the best thing they can do to ensure that they should be in the box seat for the next round of submissions. So,
and Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I was just going to ask Mr Fisher. It's on. Thank you. I was just going to ask Mr Fisher what the interest has been like, the sense post this being advertised.
Yeah, a fair bit of interest, so we expect to, based on the interest we've observed, to have all those filled up. Quite a bit, and obviously different people looking both from an existing business and able to support that, plus with a few that are looking for opportunities, I guess, to start new businesses and promote new opportunities within the region. So a good mix there.
Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. It's the finish period, if I believe, would be probably the next 5-6 weeks. Is that correct?
Yeah, the current schedule for the contractor to finish the car park works has them finishing around the 13th of November. Obviously, that's subject to wet weather. They've got a pretty tight time frame there in terms of road works and asphalt and bitumen works, but that's the current anticipated time frame.
And then moving on from that, if we have too many people requiring moorings, have we got an appetite to go back to Grumper and ask for, say, another 10 or 12 moorings to fill the appetite?
I would suggest we wait and see what response we get and how much that appetite is. I know, there is. We have seen a fair bit of interest, but as we know, with tenders of this nature, often interest may not translate to people actually putting in bids and willing to pay the fees. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I would suggest we wait until we see some hard numbers and offers.
Thank you, Mr Fisher. Any further questions, councillors? If not, would somebody move the recommendation that Appendix A, Amendment of Fees and Charges 2021, be included in the Council's 2021 Schedule of Fees and Charges? Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Fisher. We move on to item 4.2, the contract for Bulgan Reservoir. And who's going to present this report? Mr Smart's up there in the back. Morning, Mr Smart.
Morning, councillors.
Morning.
This report is probably our second last update report on the progress of the Bolgan Reservoir. Start again. Good morning, councillors.
Morning, Mr. Smart.
Apologies for that. Yes, so this hopefully is the second last report on the progress with our Bolgan Reservoir at the intake on Bolgan Creek. The reservoir has been full in the last few days, and we have been testing it. The reservoir itself is 99.9% complete. We're doing a few minor contractual repairs of defects, but yes, the reservoir will be fully operational. It has been fully operational. We've been using it for the last few days. It has been connected to the network. We are taking it off the network just to repair some very minor leakage. But once that's repaired, which should be done next week, that reservoir will be operational. The SCADA systems and the chlorine disinfection systems aren't fully completed, but they don't affect us using the reservoir. The reservoir can be operated manually, and that's the way we have been using it over the last few days. So that is the good news. There's a couple of photos attached to the report that show the asphalting around the reservoir. The turfing has been completed on the banks around the reservoir. It's starting to look like a finished site now. The access road works and the improvements to the access road are still to be done. We've measured up the extents of work that are required on that. As I reported in previous sessions, that access road has suffered considerable damage during the construction phase and needs quite a lot of work. There has been funds allocated to do that in this financial year, and we'll be moving to do that as quickly as possible. That's about all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. Any questions? Councillor Millwood.
I don't have any questions, but I would like to thank Mr. Smart and his team for the great work on this amazing piece of infrastructure, and I can't wait to see the large reduction in the boil water notices. Also, the work that they've been doing on the water main renewals at the Five Ways, which is now complete, and the roundabout renewal is in progress. And once this is completed, the road will be resealed. And I again want to commend you and your workers on your efforts here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Any further questions or comments, councillors? I'd just like to ask a question about the structural integrity of the reservoir. Where are the leaks, in the rivets or the laps?
There's a join between the concrete slab and the plate of the tank, and it seems to be getting down between the joint and underneath the tank.
Okay.
So we were aware of this risk, and there is a sealant that we are going to apply on the inside of the tank. The leakage is very, very minor, but and it poses no structural concern at all, and really the quantity is extremely small. But I just want to make it totally watertight, and for the sake of a few extra days, we'll drain it, we'll put the sealant around the inside, and that'll be the end of it.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. Any further comments or questions, councillors? If not, would somebody move that the report be received and noted? Moved by Councillor Millwood, seconded by Councillor Chewy. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Smart.
Thank you.
We move on to item 4.3, the CCR Capital Report, and Mr. Fisher is going to present this report. Welcome back, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. Through the Chair. Councillors, this report is a a consolidated report across all of our capital works. It comes, I guess, as a result of recently we've been presenting a number of reports to council across different departments within council, plus also different funding programs, and I guess to enable council to understand the big picture of its capital works task, we've moved to this consolidated report. As it stands, and this is prior to the September budget review, which is yet to be adopted by council, there is 269 projects with a total budget of $64.7 million. So once we add all those different funding programs together, we've got quite a large capital program. As of September 2020, we had expended about 34%, or $21.7 million of that, including commitments. As I've said, this report, as it stands, is pre-budget review, and council will be considering its September review at the next meeting. Following that, the next report which you will receive, the November report, will show obviously the effects of that budget review, and the staff in the next couple of weeks are going to do a lot of work on the dates and also the reporting status within that report. What you'll see in that next report will be a clear focus to prioritise the projects that are funded through the various external funding sources that are listed on page 43. As you can see there's quite a large amount of money sitting there with a June 2021 deadline, and meaning that we will be adjusting our priorities in our delivery to do everything we can to make sure we hit those funding deadlines. Obviously, the risk is if we go over those times, the state or federal government or the agency providing that money may choose not to provide that to council, meaning that ratepayers would end up picking up the bill. So you will see that in that next report. You will also see some clearer information in the schedule below about which projects are in fact funded by those external funding agencies and programs. So that will be, while some are shown now, some aren't, and we'll improve that so that councillors can get a more holistic and consistent view of the capital program status. So happy to take any questions through the chair.
Councillor Millwood.
Through the chair. So further to Mr Fisher's report, I just wanted to let people know that with the construction of the Tully Grandstand being complete, we await the start of the full reconstruction of the fields, which will include sinking a bore, drainage, pop-up irrigation, and this will all begin on the 11th of December. With the Great Greenway Caravan Park, it's currently in the design phase with quotes being obtained. In the space of the capital works, we have footpath renewals to begin at Bryant Street, at Tully, and in Silkwood. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Any further questions? Councillor Barnes.
Good, thank you, Mr Chairman. Mr Fisher, you spoke about grants running out and ratepayers picking up. On page 45, I'm a little bit taken on some of these contracts that have to be finished in December, and you haven't got progress reports in a few of them. If you have a look on page 45, in the roads section, which has been a major problem recently for council, of course we have 560 kilometres of unsealed roads. Just give us a report on that, please.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, council, there's certainly is a couple of contracts there that aren't proceeding at the pace we would like. Our contract admin team have been working with the contractors there. Certainly, I know in particular submission number 9, that contractor has provided us a program which demonstrates how they will resource and deliver by that December timeframe that they're required to deliver by. For contracts 7 and 10, there is, I guess, conversations ongoing with that contractor. We do have concerns, and at the moment, we are ramping up and tightening the screws of our contractual mechanisms. I prefer not to, I will not go into the detail of that contract here today. Needless to say, we are tightening the screws, and we'll be pushing that contractor through the mechanisms in the contract to accelerate that program and try to meet that December timeframe. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Any further questions or comments? If not, would somebody move Council receive the report and acknowledge the status of the capital works projects managed by it? Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. We move on to planning 5.1, and Mr. Jones will present this report on an application for reduction in infrastructure charges. Mr. Jones.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Jones.
Council is in receipt of a request from the Caravan and Motorhome Club of Australia Limited for a 100% reduction in infrastructure charges relating to a material change of use for an unidentified use, short stay, fully self-contained RV park at Hadrill Park. The infrastructure charges notice was issued for the amount of $8,382.72. The proposed development is for a short stay, fully self-contained RV park and meets the criteria for eligible development outlined in the policy. Proposed development will be complementary and contribute positively to the Innisfail local plan area and the wider Cassowary Coast community. Council has recommended that the request for the 100% reduction in infrastructure charges be approved by Council, provided that development is completed prior to 21 September 2023. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the officer? If not, would somebody move the officer's recommendation? Moved by Councillor Purban, seconded by Councillor Farinelli. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
We move on to item 5.2, the delegation report, and Mr. Horton will present this report.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Morning, Council. Hope everyone's well. Good to see everyone.
Mr. Horton.
Thanks, mate.
Council, the delegated report for our stats for this last month, and I look forward to next month's actually as well. You can clearly see, Council, on page 61, the planning applications are up from the same time last year, with 63 for the month of September to 27 last year. So planning's progressing nicely through our group, and keep trying to push them out as quick as we can to allow the other part of the building and plumbing and so forth to follow on from there, Council. The main thing I've handed out to Council and to look at is I did a 5-year graph on dwelling approvals and total approvals. As you can see through the bottom from 2015 to 2020. Our houses sit at 56. We're a bit low from the 5 years previously. However, talking to the staff, we've had an influx of dwellings this month, and as you'll see in the stats, we had 11 for the month. So we're slowly kicking along there. So I think with next month's figures, Mr. Mayor and Council, I think we'll push past last year's. The other pleasing part is the overall approvals. We can clearly see there for September we're at 354, well above 2015, which is our largest month for the 5 years, which was 314. So overall there's a lot of renovations getting done, and if you talk around the place with the tradies that are in, everyone's busy, which is nice to see for our community. Especially if you're waiting for an aircon or something like that, you might be waiting 6 weeks for that replacement because everyone is fairly busy. The only thing that concerns me is probably saturation in the market, where we'll probably get to a point where we don't have enough tradies to deliver the work because Townsville's busy, Cairns is busy, and we are. So that's my only concern, that probably some builders and plumbers and so forth can't take any more work on. And maybe, it'll push into next year. Let's just keep our fingers crossed that we keep moving in a positive direction for all here. And, from what I see and what I hear is, we're going well. So Council, I can answer any other questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr Horton. Any questions? Councillor Chewy.
It's not really a question, just an observation. On page 9 on my computer screen, which was the monthly approvals, I just noticed that obviously I'm guessing that the April to May in the 2020, that was the impact of COVID. It just seems to bottom right out and then go right up, and I'm just assuming that was the month that everything just stopped in Far North Queensland.
Through the chair, it didn't really stop. We still plateaued along above last year's figures. So if you look at the figures around that, especially in our building stats, you'll see that we still have maintained ourselves above the line on what we had. So overall in those monthly approvals, see for March we had 86. Last year we had 103. This year we had 113 in April to 129 this year. May's 144 to 153, and then we started to skip, which we're heading up, from there. Yeah, so we maintained where we were, which was positive for us. But now we're at a point where I don't know too many, but a lot of people that you talk to, they're busy, and you love to hear that when you're in this position in the organisation. So I just hope we keep continuing.
Thank you, Mr Horton. Any further comments? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Probably a piece that was mentioned actually in a community meeting yesterday, Mr Horton, and it's quite relevant because we're stepping into get ready at the moment, and we have our season coming for where the weather may get a little hairy at times. But a thing that was discussed yesterday was the household resilience scheme that I don't think has been advertised terribly well by the government, and it gives people within our community the opportunity to apply to get some work done to their houses if they maybe need a bit of a tidy up before the storm season comes. So I just wanted to bring that up, and I know it's making you guys busy and the builders busier, but again, never too busy. It's a great piece of work that I don't know if the broader community is terribly aware of this household resilience scheme that is available to them.
Yeah, through the chair, definitely. That is there. There's certain requirements around that for certain threshold of wages and so forth that you earn your income, which is set in that criteria. There is $150,000 on offer for renos, but yeah, it is income tested. So that is there, and it's a positive. People are using it, especially on their older homes, maybe to put in cyclone shutters over windows and those types of things. Additionally, we got the first home buyers grants and those types of things, which we look forward to seeing how that moves, I suppose, from December onwards, when they're due to, stop. Are they going to extend that? Is the government going to extend those processes and so forth? We'll wait and see with that. I hope so. Yeah. And I hope people are getting the benefit out of it at the current time.
Yep. Sorry, and just as a follow-up, Mr Chair, I mean, it's probably quite appropriate that this is the sort of scheme that is available for our more mature residents, or possibly our differently abled residents that aren't up for a first home buyers or that sort of idea. But there is assistance there that the government provides. So.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you, Mr Chair.
Councillor Millwood.
Through the chair, Mr Horton, so is this household resilience scheme, is that accessible through council, is it?
Through the chair, it's accessible through the state, so it's a state initiative. It's not a council initiative of where we work with. We do have our incentives in place around certain ideas, which is the infrastructure charges with our fees and so forth. So, we do have those benefits there. But from the stats and the figures, we're proceeding nicely where we're at.
Any further questions or comments for the officer? If not, would somebody move that the delegation report listing statistics on approvals issued by Planning Services from September 2020 be noted and received? Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr Horton.
Thanks, Council.
We move on to Governance, Environment and Finance, item 6.1, and Ms Kerr will deliver this report. Yes? Will we wait till she comes back? Welcome, Ms Kerr.
Good morning.
Ms Kerr.
Good morning. This morning I'm presenting the first quarterly progress report for the 2021 operational plan for Council. As you can see from the report, we have 89 KPIs on track and 29 on watch, and the report attached outlines statuses of each KPI and any comments from Council staff.
Thank you, Ms Kerr. Any questions or comments for the officer? Take that as a no. Would somebody move the recommendation that the quarterly review of the 2021 operational plan to September 30, 2020 be received and its contents noted? Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Pervin. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms Kerr. We move on to item 6.2, the new policy in relation to councillor information sessions and workshop, and Ms Slattery, Governess Lee, will deliver this report. Ms Slattery.
Good morning, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors.
Morning.
Morning, Ms Slattery.
This morning I am tabling a new policy for your consideration and adoption. The title of the new policy is Council Information Sessions and Workshops. So this policy provides the framework for the orderly and proper conduct of council information sessions, or CISs as we commonly know them as, and workshops, and it aims to increase the transparency in line with good governance principles. So just a couple of points to note about the new policy. So the council information sessions are informal meetings. They are not decision-making forums. As such, there are no decision-making or voting taking place at these meetings. So the councillor information forums are really an important platform for the councillors to be fully informed on complex matters that will allow for more effective discussions and debate during subsequent council meetings. They give the councillors the ability to share their views with each other, and for the councillors to seek further information, clarification, background information, details from council officers or any guest presenters that we have. It gives the council officers the ability to provide their professional opinions and reasoning behind intended recommendations, and also for presentations to be made by external parties. The workshops are really more a collaborative forum for councillor staff, and where required external parties to come in and really develop or advance proposals of topics that are of strategic nature, so for example your corporate plans or any master plans, etc. As with your formal meetings, there is a conflict of interest requirement, and that is governed by the relevant provisions of the Local Government Act. In terms of confidentiality, it is acknowledged that the councillors will be in receipt of confidential information that may or may not be part of any formal council meetings. Hence, the content and discussions within these meetings are confidential. But having said that, the council is committed to providing transparency to the community on these informal meetings, and as such, we're going to be making available the agenda for any future council information session and workshops to the public on the council website. So the councillors will be provided with the agenda at least 3 days before the actual meeting, and then the agenda will be then made to the public the next business day after the councillors receive that agenda. In addition, we are going to be making public the record of matters which are canvassed at each of these sessions, and these will be provided on the council website within 5 business days after the information session. The policy also covers your general administration in terms of who the chairperson is, the process for calling the informal meetings, and the councillor conduct as well. So if there's no further questions, I'd just like to recommend that the council adopt this new policy, the council information session and workshop policy. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for the officer? I'd just like to say I think it's a great step forward in terms of connecting with our community. There was a lot of criticism in the previous term about workshops and lack of transparency. I think these changes adopted today will improve that, and I'm certainly keen to move the recommendation. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Baines. Any further comments, councillors? All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms Slattery. The next item, 6.3, I'll leave the room. I have a conflict here, and Deputy Mayor Councillor Barnes will take the chair.
System's crashed. Okay, let's just me.
Firstly, thank you everybody. It's nice to see all the councillors supporting breast cancer with their ties, the Mayor included, who has now left the room. What we're here in respect is of a self-referral by the Mayor, and I'll ask the CEO to present his report, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At first, I wonder if we can deal with the matter of the declarable interests in respect of Councillors Farinelli and Councillor Millwood, and I suggest respectfully, Mr. Mayor, that you might seek resolution to allow the councillors to participate and vote in respect of this matter.
Good, thank you. So the question that we have in front of us, can the Councillor Millwood and Councillor Farinelli stay in the room? And I'd like to first of all move, and I'll be asking for a seconder. Right, all those in favour?
Three, Mr. Chairman. Only the non-conflicted councillors can vote on this.
All right, so I've moved it, and we've got a seconder, please. All those in favour that the two councillors can stay in the room? Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having dealt with that matter, Mr. Chairman, I note that this issue concerns a self-referred complaint in respect of Mayor Nolan. The report acknowledges that the Office of the Independent Assessor has recommended that the fact of the self-referral be taken into consideration when determining an outcome, and the Office of the Independent Assessor has thanked the Mayor for his has thanked the Mayor for his demonstrated integrity in self-referring the matter. Given that the Mayor has self-referred and admitted inappropriate conduct, it's not recommended that the matter be referred to the Councillor Conduct Tribunal President. However, this is for Council to determine. The recommendation, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, is as follows. Firstly, that Council resolve to deal with the Mayor's conduct other than by way of its investigation policy. Clearly, the Mayor has admitted to the conduct, so that would seem inappropriate. Secondly, to determine whether to refer the matter to the Councillor Conduct Tribunal. Again, given the Mayor has self-referred and admitted, that seems not to be appropriate. If it does not so resolve, Council determine the manner in which the matter might be investigated. If the Council does not determine that the matter be investigated, then, given the Mayor's self-referral and acceptance of the allegation of inappropriate conduct, it's recommended that no further investigation is necessary. The Mayor's acceptance of the fact should be formalised and noted. In relation to the matter that the Council has determined the Mayor has engaged in inappropriate conduct by breaching Section 150K1B of the Act, the appropriate disciplinary action typically is for the CEO to provide counselling to the Mayor addressing his conduct, and that I'm adding this on the run, that the matter therefore would be recorded in Council's appropriate register.
So the motion that we're going to vote on, do you want to read that one?
So the motion would be, Mr. Chairman, that Council resolve to deal with the Mayor's conduct other than by investigation, that it does not refer the matter to the Councillor Conduct Tribunal, that it determine that no further investigation is necessary, and formalise the Mayor's acceptance of the facts, which of itself provides that it will go onto the Council Conduct Register, and that the CEO be instructed to provide counselling to the Mayor in respect of that conduct.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. CEO, for a very comprehensive report. Would anyone like to speak on the motion? Right, I'd like to call someone to move that motion, please. A seconder? Moved by Councillor Bain, seconded by Councillor Pervin. All those in favour of the report? Unanimous? Thank you very much. I'll now call the Mayor back in the room. Thank you.
And through Mr. Chairman, the next item has to do with the Chief Executive Officer's performance appraisal. So I will absent myself from the room insofar as it relates to me as Council CEO, and ask for Mr. Singh to assist me.
Okay, item 6.4, the Chief Executive's appraisal, and I'll present this report, is that correct? Yep. The CEO Performance Appraisal. Chapter 2, Section 12, 4D of the Local Government Act 2009 provides that a performance appraisal of the Chief Executive Officer is to be conducted in the way that is decided by the local government. Council resolved at its special meeting on the 20th of May 2020 that an impartial external party be selected and appointed to lead the process of undertaking a performance appraisal of the Chief Executive Officer's performance against the previous performance and development agreement. A review of the Chief Executive Officer's performance over the past 3 financial years has recently been completed by an independent external third party and submitted to the Mayor and Councillors for their review and approval. The CEO performance was assessed in the following categories: strategic planning, human resources, financial and asset management, risk management, operations management and projects, stakeholder management and communication, advice to and relationship with the Council, executive behaviours, overall leadership and strategic planning. A summary of the findings from the external consultant is as follows. The CEO is considered to be generally performing at a good level in a number of key areas. These include areas such as advice and relationships with Council, executive behaviours, finance and asset management, and risk management. As in all types of reviews, there have been a number of areas identified which I intend to give attention to and work together with the CEO to implement. These include stakeholder communication, strategy and vision, and certain elements of the human resource function. The CEO has said of himself that he would have preferred to move wider throughout the region, both with internal and external stakeholders, if he had more time and opportunity, and I believe this will be an important piece in succession planning. Succession planning has commenced with the CEO announcing his intention to retire at the conclusion of his current contract, September 21. As a result, the Council is expected to commence the recruitment process for a new CEO in early 2021. The focus now for the Councillors and the CEO over the next 12 months is to action the recommendations provided in the reports, which includes ensuring the following. CEO's performance is tied to measurable KPIs. CEO drives the next strategic plan review, which is scheduled for completion in the first quarter 2021. CEO has more involvement in setting KPIs. CEO conducts performance and possibly remuneration reviews of direct reports more thoroughly. CEO requests from Council 1 or 2 highlights per meeting and deep dive into highlights or successes of 1 or 2 individual teams. CEO lifts engagement with staff. CEO reviews internal communications with the executive management team to ensure they understand Council's risk appetite. CEO implements a community consultation panel in order to grow stronger relationships and, most importantly, activate our vital asset rationalisation strategy. I look forward to implementing these recommendations with James over the remainder of his time with the Council. I just want to go to the report, and the report is quite extensive, to highlight one paragraph. The CEO of the Cassowary Coast Regional Council is considered to be generally performing at a good level in a number of key areas. These include areas such as advice and relationships with Council, executive behaviours, finance and asset management, and risk management. The CEO is highly regarded for his professional and respectful engagement with councillors and the executive team. His extensive experience of local government and wisdom is highly regarded by the executive team and a majority of the councillors. That concludes that part of the report. Are there any questions or comments, councillors? I'll take that as a no. Just find that report. This one here, yep. Okay. Would somebody move that the report be received and noted? Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move on to get James back in? Yep. We'll just wait for the CEO to return.
It was with that lady down the end there. In the office down the end. Marcia.
We now move on to organisational cultural development, item 7.1, and that's a Northern Alliance of Councils meeting in Townsville. And I hand over to the CEO to deliver his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Northern Alliance of Councils advise that every time. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Northern Alliance of Councils Incorporated postponed its annual general meeting previously. It was recommended that member councils meet in person to discuss strategic direction and future of the Northern Alliance Councils Association. On the 2nd of November, a meeting will be held in Townsville at the McCure. However, our recommendation is that due to budget constraints, no delegates from Cassowary Coast Regional Council attend the meeting on the 2nd of November, and there are no agenda items requiring submission from this council, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gott. Any questions or comments for the officer? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question to the CEO. Is the Northern Alliance of Councils Association actually going to do any live streaming of what's going on, or do we have any idea?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm afraid I don't have that information. I'm sorry, I'll find that out and advise council, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, thank you very much.
Any further questions or comments for the CEO on that report? If not, would somebody move that recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Purban. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move on to item 7.2. The Australian Local Government Women's Association branch. Mr. Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Mr. Chairman, the Australian Local Government Women's Association founded in the early 1950s. I do beg your pardon, councillors. You think I'd learn by now. Through you, Mr Chairman, the Australian Local Government Women's Association was founded in the early 50s and was, excuse me, opened in Sydney in 1952. The association, in my proposition, Mr Mayor, has done quite a lot of good for local government generally over the years. The association is chartered to assist in further knowledge and understanding of the function of local government, chartered to encourage all to participate in local government, in particular women, to encourage all to make a career in local government, and in particular attracting and retaining women, to watch over and protect the interests and rights of women in local government, to take action in relation to any subject or activity affecting local government legislation, and to act in an advisory capacity to intending women candidates for local government elections. So its charter is clearly quite broad. All branches of the ALGWA are autonomous. However, their aims and objectives are based on those of the National Association. Branches hold conferences, seminars and special meetings to promote and advertise their work and to educate women in local government. National conferences are held biennially. I can report that at a recent meeting of the association, Councillor Kylie Farinelli was nominated and elected as Zone 1 representative for the Queensland branch of the association. That purview covers all councils from Burdekin north and to the west to Mount Isa. I note, Mr Chairman, that whilst it's not specifically considered in the report, typically councils would cover expenses of attendance at those association meetings.
Yep.
So the recommendation, Mr Mayor, is that the report be received and noted.
Okay, thank you, Mr CEO. Councillor Millwood.
I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate Councillor Farinelli on her appointment as a Zone 1 representative for ALGWA, which again is the Australian Local Government Women's Association. Congratulations, Kylie.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Councillor Farinelli.
Yes, through the Mayor and to the councillors and all of Council particularly, I was very honoured to be asked to be part of this board. I did attend a lot of seminars and conferences in my last term, so was quite familiar with the Australian Local Government Women's Association, and they really helped me. The group, of women who are in local government. It's not just for councillors; it's also for women who work within local government. My role I take very seriously. I'm actually, I think, geographically got the largest zone in Queensland, so that's going to be a challenge. But part of my role includes attending quarterly executive meetings in Brisbane, maintaining contact with and provide support for members in Zone 1, distribute quarterly e-news brief to members in my zone, identify networking opportunities for members, recruiting members, provide pre-election support to members, and report regularly through the ALGWA newsletter. I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anybody the fact that I'm very passionate about the part that women play in local government, not just as elected representatives but also employed by local government. And I will be encouraging, I've already spoken to both my fellow female councillors to become part of ALGWA if they see fit, because they're both new to the role and I see the benefit that they could get from being part of this group. I've also spoken to some of our staff and and some of them have already signed up to be part as well. And I'm extending an invitation to as many women as possible within this organisation to become a part of ALGWA, and the networking opportunities, training that is available, and also extending an invitation to my fellow councillors and staff if they would like me to put forward any training and things that could be presented by ALGWA for their benefit. Very excited. This is going to be an added job for me, but I'm really proud to have this opportunity, and especially with next year being the national conference, which will be held in conjunction with the state conference at the Whitsundays. So I'll be hoping as many of women from within our organisation will join me at that and take part. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Farinelli. Any further? Councillor Dewey.
Yeah, once again, congratulations, Councillor Farinelli. I have handed in my nomination form. Thank you. I was actually not instructed, but given guidance that this was a great organisation when I put my hand up in 2016 to become part of that and to encourage other women to become part of it. So I look forward to being part of this group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dewey. Any further comments? Would somebody... Councillor, it's moved by Councillor Bain, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move on to general business, and I think an important item should be Mr Sadler's item that he'd like. Councillor Millwood.
Can I just take a break out there for
1 second? We'll wait for you, mate.
Thank you.
Mr Sadler. Pardon?
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to leave the meeting now as I have a prescribed interest in this item.
Thank you, Councillor Purvin. We're just going to wait for Councillor Millwood to return. Mr Sadler. Thank you, Councillor Millwood. How we'll deal with this recommendation, given Councillor Purvin has declared a prescribed conflict and left the room, we'll deal with item 1 first, and then ask Councillor Purvin to return, and then we'll deal with 2 and 3 in a block as the second part of the process. Having said that, I'll hand over to Mr Sadler.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Good morning, Council. On Monday afternoon this week, on the 19th of October, the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries have referred further submissions in relation to the seasonal worker program. The pilot program brought through from the Commonwealth Government in relation to 4 plane loads of Vanuatuan workers to come to our region and help our agri-businesses. This federal program has been referred to us by the state, Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, and obviously 3 tiers of government are working through this process. It is a pilot program. The application that has been made from Jobs Australia Enterprises Limited, and locally known as Speedy Staff Solutions, comprises of 6 agribusinesses in our region and a total of 34 employees coming into the region. Through our consultation period, and particularly consulting with the banana industry, they have had many challenges, and particularly through the COVID-19 piece, but also with the most recent impact of the Panama TR4 disease. And we're moving into our peak season. Some of our farmers are struggling for labour, and checks and balances like we did with the previous report on the special meeting on Monday. They have checked and done extensive checking in relation to labour hire regionally. The initial assessment by the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries is that the application meets the needs and guidelines by the Chief Health Officer of Queensland, and that the management controls are in place. As part of those applications, both health and transport management plans have been submitted and meet the requirements by the state. So one of the other things from the past was also, from the recent one, was compliance and how compliance will be done. And I have talked to the regional director from Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, and both his staff and biosecurity officers for the region will take part in compliance, as well as officers from the Department of Workplace Health and Safety, and as well as the Queensland Health staff under the Health Act. In addition, this has been forwarded to the LDMG as well, Mr. Chair, and again, this has been referred to the Regional Queensland Health Services for review as well. At the time of the report, haven't got feedback from Queensland Health as yet in relation to that. We do have very tight timeframes to support our local agri-businesses in relation to the federal government process in relation to this. And there are a number of recommendations there, as you highlighted earlier. The first recommendation is that that Council considers the application by Jobs Australia Enterprises relating to Peacefully Valley Farming, Zara's farm, be deliberated by Council for a formal response to the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Sadler. Councillor Millwood.
Yeah, okay. Given that we haven't had any feedback from Queensland Health, I have got a few questions. After our special meeting on Monday, I'm still not confident with the information I've been provided about the health and safety of the community in these times of COVID, and the ask of DAF, of local government, to make a decision on allowing overseas workers to quarantine on site. I don't have issues with the workers coming, although we must take into consideration that we have the highest unemployment in many years. My opinion is this should be put back to the state and federal government, and if locals don't want to do the work, then maybe we need to ask ourselves some very important questions like why. These farm workers have the worst working conditions, and they deal with extreme heat, mosquitoes, long periods of relentless rain, so maybe our government needs to have some incentives that supports the employment of the unemployed that we are supporting on benefits. I also have the question of why are we going to allow overseas workers to come and quarantine on site and they can start work immediately when we have lots of fly-in, fly-out workers who live in Australia and yet must quarantine before and after every return, even if they're in low-risk areas. How does the labour testing market work? I don't understand. With the highest unemployment in years and farmers cannot get workers, maybe we're all getting this wrong. It's been brought to my attention with Mr. Catter at the present time, Bob Catter has had some success in this area with a new incentive due to start on the 1st of December, which gives school leavers paid transport and living expenses if they choose to work within our farming sector. And this, I feel, is more of a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Any further comments? Councillor Farinelli.
Where do we start? I'm going to start by saying Councillor Barnes called this as a test case on Monday. You said this was a test case. You are 100% correct. Seems quite interesting to me that our test case came to us Monday morning for 10 Vanuatuan workers, and Council received an email at 10 minutes past 12 on Monday with an additional 34 Vanuatuan workers to come into the region. My suspicion is that DAF knew of the total 44 Vanuatuan workers initially, but as Councillor Barnes said, we were put to the test with 10, and obviously we passed the test to some. I'd like to point out something that was of interest to me that came out of Monday's workshop, and I think needs to be addressed here. The Mayor made a statement, we've got to accept the facts, and the facts are other farmers are bringing in Vanuatuan workers right now. When I heard about this agenda item, I contacted a board member and I asked permission to mention her name. She said that's fine, it's Jade Buchanan. She said she has 4 Vanuatu workers on their way now. If we vote no today, then we're discriminating against Mr., well, I won't mention his name, but against the applicant. I would like to question, when the Mayor made that comment on Monday about discriminating, were you aware that Ms. Buchanan's 4 staff were actually the subject of this application coming to us today, and not that they were already on the way and the decision was made? Because how I understand your comment that day was you were basically appealing to the councillors on the day to be careful about how they decided on those 10 people, because there were already people on their way that if we were to decide no, we would be discriminating against the people who already were on their way. Now, given there was up there before, Ms. Buchanan's 4 staff are actually the subject of this approval here, I would just like to question whether you were aware back then that they were actually the subject of future approval in imploring to councillors to decide with the concern of discriminating against that decision at the time.
No, I wasn't aware of the fact that she was part of this application, no.
No. So it's very, through you again, if that's okay, it's very concerning to me, the fact that the councillors sitting around this table, and it was very strong words spoken to me that day to be careful not to discriminate. I've actually typed up the conversation that happened on Monday, and it was very concerning to me that the councillors sitting around this table were basically said, we've got to get this right, the facts are the facts. They're already on their way. They're already on their way. They're coming right now, and we've got to be careful with this decision on Monday to make sure we don't discriminate against the person on Monday who is making the application because these workers are on the way. My understanding is those workers are not on their way. They are the subject of this application, and therefore I just question. It just to me seems like the evidence and the information given to councillors on Monday was actually incorrect. And again, I say, Councillor Barnes called this as a test case, and you were right. And it just seemed quite interesting to me that within 2 hours, these other 34 people landed. Was that in fact a test case? Who got it wrong? Because when Ms. Buchanan spoke to you, she obviously knew that her application was in the mail and still to come forward. So, yeah, I've got concerns.
Okay, that's fine, Councillor Farrenley. Let's put it in context. That was a majority vote. It's done and dusted. You voted against it. That's your democratic right. We're talking about a new application today, so let's stay on track and talk about the officer's report today. Back to you, Mr. Sadler.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll bring us back, and I suppose the focus of this report is about the on-farm quarantine, and and coming back to the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
We're dealing with item 1 only here. Are you moving?
I'm moving the recommendation under item 1.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Barnes. Any further comment, councillors? CEO.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation provides either an A or a B, so I'm assuming, Councillor Bones, that you're moving recommendation 1A.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I am moving recommendation 1A, support the application.
Thanks for the pick-up, Mr. CEO. And you seconded the same?
Very same.
Okay, all in favour? It's carried 4-2. Thank you. Somebody get Councillor Purban to come back, please. Councillor Purban. All right, back to Mr. Sadler. You can speak to item 2 and 3 now. That'll be done as a block.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, recommendation 2 is that the application from Jobs Australia Enterprises Limited, excluding Peacefully Valley Farming Zaras, be deliberated by Council for a formal response to the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries by the close of business today to either support the application or reject the application, including comments and concerns. And item number 3, Mr. Chair, that for future Department of Agricultural Fisheries referrals for on-farm quarantine for the seasonal worker program be delegated to both yourself, Mr. Mayor, and also to the CEO for future determinations.
Thank you, Mr. Sadler. Councillors, comments or questions for the officer in relation to items 2 and 3 on the agenda? Councillor Purban.
Yes. Through you, Mr. Chair. Why aren't growers employing locals? Unemployment is only expected to get worse. Banana growers do employ locals in a variety of roles. They are one of the major employers on the Cassowary coast. The banana industry supports the current Pick Queensland campaign, which is designed to ensure more Australians are aware of the jobs available on farm. However, at the moment there simply aren't enough locals to applying for general farm work positions. This is an issue in agriculture across the country. If these positions are not filled, as they have been workers from overseas for a number of years, farms will not be able to comply to continue to supply fruit. The flow-on effects of this for supporting businesses, families involved with industry and consumers could potentially be devastating. Are these international workers protected by the same employment opportunities and pay rates that the Australian employees have? Yes. Employees are protected by an award and have means to dispute this and raise concerns. Banana growers pride themselves on providing ethical and legal workplaces, evidenced by the fact that workers return year after year. What about the risk of COVID-19? In order to be part of the resumption of the seasonal workers program, at this stage it's only a pilot program, employers must go through a detailed application process that requires approval from the Chief Health Officer. It takes on board recommendations from other stakeholders, including the Cassowary Coast Regional Council. Stringent plans are in place for quarantining on farm, travel and general operation. Only workers from very low-risk COVID-19 countries are eligible to participate and have tested for COVID-19 before and after entry to Australia. Countries participating in the pilot currently have no COVID-19. If these preconditions are met, the COVID-19 community transmission risk posed by these workers is no greater than that of the Cassowary Coast regional population. Workers will only travel directly from the recruitment country to Queensland. Another requirement of the pilot is that these seasonal workers from Pacific Island countries must work while they are quarantined on or near farms. This was a requirement of the Queensland Health, so that they are busy with less time for leisure than if they were quarantined without work and living in towns. This was the government's preferred approach. Also because preference for the limited quarantining accommodation in the arrival destinations such as Cairns and Brisbane needed to go to returning Australians. Who will police these plans? The approved employer is responsible for enforcing the quarantine plan, which Workplace Health and Safety and DAF will audit. Where directed, an approved employer must undergo a work health and safety systems audit and on-site hazard inspections by a Workplace Health and Safety Queensland inspector before workers commence work. Monitoring and enforcement is primarily the responsibility of Department of Agriculture and Fisheries and Workplace Health and Safety Queensland enforcement officers who have been appointed as emergency officers under the Public Health Act 2005. Why isn't there support from federal or state government to help farmers offer more money to locals in the region? This is a question for government representatives. However, there are some programs such as relocation assistance. What about the thousands of Australians stranded overseas? Workers are not taking airline seats or quarantine accommodation from Australians. Seasonal worker program flights are specifically arranged and separate charter flights paid for by the approved employer. Hotel quarantine is available for the most vulnerable Australians registered and given priority access to return home. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Councillor Pervin. Any further comments? Councillor Farinelli.
Yes, I've actually got a comment. Prior to this meeting, I was actually going to question whether Councillor Pervin had a declarable conflict of interest, given the this item is in respect to basically his largest customers, being the banana industry, and given the fact that he actually holds the labour hire licence as the nominated person for Backpacker Shack in Innisfail. So I actually didn't bring that up when Councillor Pervin decided to declare a prescribed conflict of interest, because I thought it wouldn't actually be an issue we needed to worry about. But the fact that he's actually re-entered the room and taken part in this discussion, I do bring up whether Councillor Pervin should actually even be involved in this discussion. I understand he removed himself from the room because he had a business relationship with the farmer in item 1 of the recommendation, but in fact, my belief is that you're in the industry, that the Backpacker Shack that you work for as the manager, and it's on their website that you are the manager. It's in the licence agreement that you are the nominated officer of the Backpacker Shack for labour hire, and therefore, while you removed yourself from the meeting for one of the farmers, in fact, you provide a service to the banana industry through the Backpacker Shack, while the farmer in item 1 may be your only current customer. There is nothing to say that there could be a flow on from other farmers in the future. So yeah, I'm just putting this out there. As I said, I had planned to originally, but I didn't see that point when Councillor Pervin removed himself from the room, but I do now.
Okay, well, Councillor Farinelli, you're in fault here, because when I read that out, you should have called Councillor Pervin out then. You didn't do it. You decided later in the meeting to do it. I'm striking that out because you failed to comply with that requirement at the start of the meeting. Councillor Pervin did declare his conflict and left the room for item 1, and I think you're drawing a long bow to say that in the future his backpacker company, as a manager, not the owner, could get some work out of the banana industry. That's a long bow, but again I want to repeat, you had a requirement to declare Mr Pervin there and you didn't do it. Any further comments, councillors? Okay, I just want to make a couple of comments. Councillor Farinelli.
Just to the CEO, through you, Mr Mayor, my understanding was that when Councillor Pervin declared a prescribed conflict of interest and that he would be removing himself from the room for the item. At no time did he say it was the item and only point one. He actually he did.
No, you're wrong.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, at the very start of the meeting, I indicated which item it was, and also prior to the meeting, I emailed through to the CEO and Ms. Slattery which items I would be declared in.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Chairman, I identified when I talked about the written advice I had that it referred to Zara, and if memory serves me, we can...
That was my mistake. I thought it was the whole item.
Okay, any further comments, councillors? I just want to make a couple of comments. General, I guess, but the glowing tributes to Mr. Frederick James earlier with the sunflower display. Who actually did the work to plant all those sunflowers? Have you? Vanuatu backpackers, Vanuatu banana workers. So just make that little connection in the community, a community benefit from these people. They don't just come here and take money and send it back to Vanuatu. They actually deliver on the ground. Fred didn't do the work. The Vanuatu workers did the work for him. Just make that comment. The other comment I want to make is, again, the bottom line here is farmers are the heart and soul of our community. We're an agricultural-based community. They contribute 28% of our rate base. And we're talking about labour to pick their fruit. No labour, no produce to market, no income, downward pressure on their ability to pay their rates. 28% of our rate base. And we're cutting them off with an opportunity to get some labour. We'll be sitting around this table in 4 months' time doing the budget. And what are we going to do if we find out that farmers can't send their fruit to market? They're actually cutting them and dropping them on the ground. That's the position you're putting them in. And I'll move this recommendation be approved. Do I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor. Well, hang on, through the chair. Councillor Baines, a seconded. Councillor Millwood.
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment there through the chair. With the seasonal workers, this is according to the Australian government, that the seasonal workers benefit from the opportunity to earn Australian wages and gain valuable on-job learning opportunities, but it also does state that the seasonal workers use the money earned in Australia to pay for their kids' education and maybe to buy make a small business or build a house. This is not in supporting the Australian way. And I also wanted to make comment that, as I said earlier, I'm not against these people coming here, but I just have to ask the question of why the Australian workers don't want to do these jobs. There's a big question mark there that says, you know, this is about giving Aussie workers a fair go first, and maybe we're barking up the wrong tree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. It's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Carried 4-2. Thank you. 5-2. 5-2. Sorry, Councillor Pervin's back in the room. So items 2 and 3 were carried 5-2. Okay, thank you, Mr. Sadler. We move on to further general business. Councillor Chewy. Oh, sorry. Councillor Chewy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have 4 items, so I'll try not to talk too much, though. Just recently, I enjoyed attending the RADF workshops with Ms. Hanson. It's a great way to form partnerships and connections through the grant writing workshops and to assess best practice applications and identify RADF projects within the Cassowary coast. Upcoming events, there's a farewell concert by the String family that played at Paranella Park, and that will be at the Shire Hall. They'll be leaving our region, and they were very important in our region. And also we've got the Festival of Small Halls, which will take place in the Shire Hall, and they partner with the Woodfordia group that coordinates the Woodford Folk Festival. There'll be several artists performing, and Robert Seeney is just one that will be there performing, local gentleman, and that'll be November 20th. We've also secured funding for the Australia Day celebrations, and I look forward to providing Australia Day parties at each of our 4 townships in the pools, Tully, Cardwell, Mission Beach and Innisfail. And I'd just like to add, it's been a trying year for everybody, so it's a great time to think about Australia Day Awards. And if you think of anybody that's shown leadership or resilience over the last 12 months, it's a great opportunity to recognise. Even if they don't win, a nomination is a great way to let people know that you were grateful for their help and guidance. I'd also like to say congratulations to the Cassowary Coast Libraries. They recently held and are continuing to hold local history symposiums. These representatives from the Alarish Diggers Museum, Innisfail and District Historical Society and the Cardwell Bush Telegraph were in attendance. One of Council's visions in building resilient communities is through strengthening partnerships and activating heritage tourism through a deeper knowledge of the region's rich cultural history. I spoke to Trish Ernst, who's the president of the Innisfail and District Historical Society, and she attended yesterday's meeting. She said it was wonderful, very informative, and looked forward very much to the upcoming sessions. And I'm very proud to say that there are 2 members of the very newly formed Mission Beach Historical Society in attendance too, so that was great. I'd just like a shout out to the team who completed the works at the Jackie Street boat ramp. The team worked when the tides were low, and after a week later, the ramp is open. There's a few little more tweaks to finalise stuff. But I think it's great news because I believe, according to my husband and the mackerel sky, it's a great week coming up for fishing. So very important. And I'd also like to acknowledge that October is and has been and will be, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, hence the pink. So our thoughts go to both victims of breast cancer and survivors. Congratulations to the teams in Innisfail and Tully working hard to fundraise to support local women with care packages. I've spoken to the 2 different parties involved, and so far over $5,000 has been raised, and that, well, as I said, will support local ladies. I know that the set sale at the Commonwealth Bank in Innisfail closes tomorrow, well, the draw will be tomorrow, so you've still got an opportunity today to go and get some tickets if you haven't already. And the Chemo Chicks in Mission Beach and Tully are still, their raffle will be drawn on Friday. So on their behalf, I thank community and business houses for showing great support to such a great cause. And the business houses in Tully have done a fantastic job dressing up in pink, and I believe Innisfail has the opportunity to do so tomorrow. So, as I said, our thoughts are with the victims and survivors of breast cancer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toohey. Any further general business items? Councillor Pervin.
Yes, thank you. I just want to ask council staff if they could possibly look into repainting the white lines on Cartier Road to allow for the safe passage of children riding and walking to and from school. This is just something to do in the meantime before the new bike path goes ahead. It's just a bit of a safety concern. The current markings are there, but if they could just go over them with a stencil and look into that one from. Thank you.
He's even got a tin of paint in his hand, I think.
Ruler.
Yeah. Mr. Sadler.
Through the chair, thanks for your question, Councillor Pervin. What we will do is get an update in relation to our line marking program. It has been delayed due to a number of staffing and resource issues, so I'll be able to give you an update on the program later on. Don't have that at hand today, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Sadler. Any further general business? Yes, Mr. CEO.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, the Department of Local Government, Racing and Multicultural Affairs has advised that the Local Government Remuneration Commission.
Microphone. 4 times, mate.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Was that 4 times and now I'm out? Yeah. The Local Government Remuneration Commission, upon advice from the Department of Local Government, Racing and Multicultural Affairs, has advised that the Commission is commencing its usual annual remuneration review to determine remuneration to be paid to mayors, deputy mayors and councillors commencing 1st of July 2021. Submissions originally could be sent to the Review Commission by Monday the 26th of October. However, that timeline has been extended to the 30th of October. So if any councillor, typically what would happen in this space is if a councillor, mayor or a CEO felt there was some reason why the Remuneration Commission ought increase the maximum amounts payable to councillors, then that argument could be made by way of submission. Previously, it was often done with regards amalgamated councils, where there are extra duties and responsibilities created through amalgamation. However, that's long since dealt with. So just an information piece, if any councillors wish to make a submission, then I have the appropriate website details and can distribute them. I'll do that without request, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, councillors, any views around the table about a pay rise and submission that needs to be forwarded in pretty quick time to have the submission considered by the Remuneration Board? Personally, COVID recovery phase, not a good look if we put our hand up, and I'm strongly of the view that we should not have a submission for a pay rise. But I'll leave it at that. It's up to you guys. Any comments, councillors? Looks like it's a no, James. No action. Thank you. Can the Minute Secretary make sure that's recorded, please, that the councillors unanimously agreed that we do not put in a submission for a pay rise. Okay. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Any further general business items? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One more, Mr. Sadler. That's why I got you back to the table. Yesterday at the Community Sector Network, there were discussions and a great presentation by our disaster coordinator, Mr. Andrew Portelli. And one of the discussions around the floor was about people with special needs within our community, whether they be elderly or whether they be differently abled. And as we're moving into the get ready time, there were discussions around assistance with the elderly, or our pensioners, or our differently abled peoples. This discussion rolled into a piece around there are many support systems out in the community that are available for these people with special needs. And one of the ideas floated yesterday was that possibly council could do a piece of work around how we join the dots with people who need assistance, because we know there's ones out there. We're doing the Help Your Neighbour program. I know the local Masonic Lodge, as this season comes forward, they work with all the widows within their organisation. I'm sure all the other not-for-profits do work in that space as well. I already mentioned the Household Resilience Scheme, which I think is something the other sections of our community should look at. There's government support there. So it was more just a piece, Mr. Sadler, around how we may be able to do a bit of work towards how we assist with some of the people that have some special needs, more joining the dots, not Cassowary Coast Regional Council doing everything on their behalf, but there's suppliers out there, there's the not-for-profits, you know, get out and help your neighbours. I know there's already been a working bee out on the street where I live, where people are helping if anyone needs any assistance. So it's more a promotional piece, and we've got to remember that some of the elderly don't do the internet. They can't buy a newspaper anymore, they believe. So how we get the message out that there is assistance there, and it's not necessarily just the regional council that should be providing this assistance. There's plenty of work there.
Through the chair, great question and commentary, Councillor Baines. As you stated, that our disaster coordinator is actively working on our Get Ready program throughout the community and doing many sessions with different parts of our community in relation to readiness for the forthcoming cyclone and wet season. And yes, getting to know your neighbour and your neighbourhood, and from a community piece, is definitely a strength that our region has and can tap into further. In relation to connecting the community into different avenues, we do have many different volunteer groups, as well as the NDIS program, where particularly if people that do have certain needs can tap into that program and get assistance. So look, I will raise and highlight this with the community development team and ensure that we can strengthen and grow what we do have now as part of our Get Ready program.
Through you, thank you.
Any further general business, councillors? Okay. It's time to move into committee. Can I have somebody move that we go into committee, please? Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? Carried unanimously. We turn. Yeah. Councillors, would somebody move that we come out of committee so we can address these two matters? Councillor Baines moved, Councillor Purban second, all in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 9.1, quarterly outstanding rates, and Ms Vick will present this report.
The report is presented to council for council information regarding the status of rates and charges to the 12th of October, with a recommendation that the report be received and noted.
Any questions, councillors, on that report? Moved by Councillor Farinelli, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 9.2, quarterly outstanding sundry debtors, and Ms Vick will present this report.
This report is presented for council's information, highlighting the current status of sundry debtors, excluding rates and charges, with the recommendation that the outstanding sundry debtors report be received and noted.
Moved by Councillor Tui, seconded by Councillor Baines. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Meeting closed 11:37. Thanks, everybody.